Welcome to Next Round with the Pacific Research Institute. I'm your host, Rowena Ichon. Few topics are hotter these days than mail-in ballots and the role of the U.S. Postal Service. So we're privileged to have as our guest John Barger, a member of the Postal Board of Governors appointed by President Trump. John is also Managing Director of Northern Cross Partners, an investment advisory firm. Tim and I appear as Senior Director of Communications, and I chat with John about the Postal Service's plans to move what looks to be an unprecedented number of mail-in ballots in the upcoming election, the misinformation and politicization of the Post Office's role, as well as the current financial and operational state of the U.S. Postal Service. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to PRI's Next Round podcast, Governor Barger.
Oh, it's great to be here. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all.
So before we dive in the issues, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a member of the U.S. Postal Service Board of Governors and how you found yourself with a front row seat in what's become a political firestorm.
Well, it's funny because, so in order to become a governor of the Postal Service, one of the requirements is that you've had institutional responsibility for a large number of employees. And in the case of my background, when I chaired the board of the Los Angeles County Employees Retirement Association Board of Investments, we were responsible for approximately 160,000 employees of Los Angeles County for their retirement security and overall administration of their post-employment benefits. On that basis, and also given my background in business, finance, and public affairs, public policy, I was approached by the administration. They had heard about my involvement here in California in the public policy area, along with business, and so they asked me if I'd be willing to consider a role as a governor of the Postal Service. And after going through a couple of interviews, the White House sent my name up to the Senate. They conducted their background checks, included their questionnaires, and then I was confirmed by the United States Senate about a year and a half ago.
So with COVID-19 leading the way to what will surely be an unprecedented volume of mail-in voting this year, there's been a huge political uproar this summer over the Postal Service's plans for the November election. So share with our listeners what the Postal Service is planning to ensure that every mail-in ballot is received on time and the votes of millions of Americans voting by mail are counted.
Sure, that's a great question. I want to say from the outset that the United States Postal Service has been dedicated to supporting elections in this country time immemorial, and the Postal Service has performed admirably over the years. This year will be no exception despite COVID. One fact that's worth noting is that we deliver approximately 500 million pieces of mail a day, and at peak, we deliver before Christmas. I think the busiest day before Christmas is between 4 and 5 billion pieces of mail in a day. So we don't anticipate there being any kind of capacity problems in handling vote by mail, whether it be absentee ballot or vote by mail as is understood in the states that allow it. As an example, let's say that 200 people vote by mail. That represents far below the capacity that we rely on to deliver mail every day. So we don't anticipate a problem from that perspective. It's also important to note that the men and women of the United States Postal Service are absolutely devoted to serving the American people in delivering not only ballots, but medication, and that we feel more than capable of doing that. Nothing has changed.
So not surprisingly, there's been a lot of partisan charges and misinformation levied in the media about the Postal Service's efforts to deliver these tens of millions of ballots this fall. Would you set the record straight and dispel some of those myths? Should Californians or any American fear that the Postal Service won't deliver the ballots on time?
Well, I'd want to know specifically the claims that have been made, but what I can say is that we are ready. We have been ready. The Postal Service, our Board of Governors, working with the management team at the Postal Service, has created an election mail task force and an election mail committee on the board, which is collaborating to oversee the election and make sure that there are no glitches. But again, I would assure the American people, I think our chairman, our board, our postmaster general, and our union leaders, and those who represent the workforce would represent that we are prepared and that people have nothing to fear. Now, there are certain states that have instituted measures for vote by mail. And I think we would encourage them to work closely with the Postal Service to make sure that the standards that they are imposing on their people are consistent with the general mail delivery capabilities of the Postal Service. So, but from the standpoint of us doing our job, we're more than prepared. And in fact, the Postmaster General recently shot a video with the four union leaders, the four unions of the Postal Service, the letter carriers and the United Postal Workers, and the other two unions, to confirm that we are ready and we are united in meeting the needs of the American people.
You know, astonishingly, the Postal Service has even gotten criticism for giving Americans what is really correct advice on mail-in voting in a mailer that was sent out a few weeks ago. And I know I got it here, and I'm someone who's been involved in politics and state government for a long time. I thought it was all good advice, so I didn't understand what all the uproar was about. But it sort of begs the bigger question, you know, what are your thoughts on how just politicized the Postal Service has become as an issue in this campaign? And what can we do going forward to calm these rough political seas that the Postal Service has endured in recent months?
Well, I would simply say that it's unfortunate that there's an old African saying that when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And I think that there is a meta-narrative that the Postal Service somehow is involved in the outcome of the election when nothing's been further from the case. The Postal Service is a bipartisan run organization with dedicated employees, 630,000 of them, who serve every nook and cranny of this country and who intend to carry out their civic duty. We view the Postal Service as a service to the American people. We are not a business, although we try to run like a business from the standpoint of being self-sufficient, self-sustaining. We're making efforts to achieve that. But in the meantime, the American people should be absolutely assured that on a bipartisan basis, our board of Republicans and Democrats is absolutely committed and confident in what we are going to be doing for this election and that our ability to deliver. It is unfortunate it's become politicized, and we're doing the best we can to take the Postal Service out of that political calculus.
Aside from the election issues, Governor Barger, we hear a lot in the news and at congressional hearings about ongoing problems with the U.S. Postal Service's operations, such as declining demand and increasing debt. From your perspective, how serious are the challenges facing the Postal Service today, and should Americans be concerned about any major changes in mail service in the horizon?
I do not believe the American people should be concerned about changes in mail service. I do believe there are challenges. We all know there are challenges at the Postal Service. We've lost $70 billion over the past 10 years. That said, the changes that management is undertaking with the support of the Board of Governors, we believe is going to make the Postal Service stronger to support the American people. We continue to be committed to 6-day delivery. We are mindful, particularly through COVID, of the importance of the Postal Service meeting the needs of the American people, particularly with vital things like medical supplies and PPE and package delivery services and the mail itself. We're absolutely committed to that. That has not changed, and we believe we are going to make the Postal Service stronger with the changes that the Postmaster General and his team, with the support of the board, are instituting. Now, that said, it's really, really important that we communicate that clearly to the American people so that the American people understand what we're doing, and we're making best efforts to make that happen.
So, as a member of the Board of Governors, you have a front row seat, really, in charting the future of the Postal Service and mail delivery. So, what are some of the reforms that you believe should be seriously considered to alleviate these ongoing problems that we've been talking about and kind of build that efficient mail service operation that everyone wants to see for the future?
Well, first of all, there are some accounting things that have been going on with the Postal Service that were imposed upon the Postal Service by Congress back in 2006. So, for example, the Postal Service was required to fund pensions in a way that no other private or public entity in the country is required to fund. And as a result, there are very, very burdensome requirements for us to fund our pensions that immediately cause financial stress on the Postal Service. In addition, Medicare integration, it's a matter of practice that people who are qualified avail themselves of Medicare. Postal Service is not given any credit for Medicare. We have our own self-funded medical program. It's far more expensive than any private concern has to navigate, or public for that matter. So there's some basic reforms there, but also from a standpoint of efficiency, there are things we can do just to make the trucks and the delivery vehicles and the planes run on schedule or run to full capacity that can save us hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in the coming years. And that's without layoffs. That's just basically supply chain logistics. And we're working on that. And the Postmaster General DeJoy is doing a masterful job of identifying those opportunities to be more efficient without laying off people or without reducing the workforce and the like. We also need to figure out ways to fill the pipes more. We have a phenomenal infrastructure. We have an infrastructure that is very, very unique and is basically 250 years old. That infrastructure that serves every corner of our country is something that we can leverage to provide better service and vital services to the American people that meet our mission statement of being the institution that binds our nation together. For example, de Tocqueville, when he wrote The History of American Democracy, or Democracy in America, marveled at how well informed our people were in the most rural parts of our country. One of the reasons he cited was the U.S. Postal Service, at the time the United States Post Department, and the fact that the United States Post Department was responsible for communicating and delivering communications to every person in our country. So the U.S. Postal Service, we consider ourselves to be a vital service to the American people, an institution of government, that although we need to be self-sustaining and we need to make best efforts to do that, we also are a force to bind our nation together, which we need now more than ever. And that in doing that, we are not only in the package and mail business, we're in the basic communications business of making sure the American people have what they need, are informed, have the ability to communicate with one another and with the government.
And Governor Barger, for our last question, do you have any advice to Americans and of course our listeners to be sure that their mail-in ballot gets in on time?
Well, the greatest privilege we have as Americans is the right to vote. And we also need to be wise in how we vote. We need to be wise to the candidates we choose. We also need to be diligent in making sure that we request our ballots, if that's required, state by state, or if it's not required, that when our ballot does come, that we fill it out expeditiously and we follow the instructions provided on that ballot. It's pretty much common sense. And the American people are people who practice common sense. As a people, we get things right. So my advice to the American people is use your good common sense, follow the directions that are prescribed by the state in which you're voting or by the local election board, and have confidence that we, the Postal Service, will do our job on behalf of the American people.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to our guest, John Barger, and to my colleague, Tim Anaya. If you like this episode, please tell your friends and subscribe to PRI's podcast at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and now iHeartRadio and Spotify. And when you're on these platforms, don't forget to give us a big 5 stars. If you don't subscribe to any of these platforms, you can still listen on PRI's YouTube page, youtube.com/Pacific Research 1. That's the number 1. Thanks for listening. I'm Rowena Itchon. Hope you'll come back again for Next Round with PRI.